This is an oral history interview with Hester Combs in her room on September 16th, 1982. The interviewer is Susan Gortner. Mrs. Combs, where was your father born?
I think in Tennessee. I'm not sure.
And your mother?
In Indiana.
What was your father's name?
John.
And what was your mother's name?
Fanny Austin Combs, Milligan.
What type of work did your father do?
He was a truck gardener.
How big of area did he farm?
Well, one time we lived on the Tapman farm, just mostly truck gardening. We moved from there on to Bill Smith's farm. Then we farmed, general farming. And we lived there until my older brother got married. And we moved to town, and he stayed on to the farm.
When you lived on the truck farm, how old were you? Is that where you grew up?
I imagine I was about 15.
What kind of things did he grow?
Oh, he raised all kind of early vegetables, and mostly onions. He'd plant the seed, and they grew to be real big, and then we pulled them and left them on the ground until they dried, and then we'd pull the tops off. They were ready for market. He also raised a lot of watermelons and muskmelons.
Where did he sell the things?
Well, at that time, you could peddle them around town, and he had a spring wagon, and he peddled them around town and sold them.
Did you help with that?
But
Did you help with that?
no, not with that.
When you moved to the other farm, then what type of things did you raise?
They raised corn and wheat and oats. There was nothing about soybeans at that time.
Do you remember helping with chores on the farm?
Oh, sure.
What type did you do?
Oh, we always gathered the eggs, and we'd fill kerosene lamps with coal oil and clean the chimneys. That was our chore, too. Oh, other little odd jobs that our mother would have for us to do.
Did you help with the cooking?
Some, yes, and I'd love to. But my mother one time said, "Oh, Hester, I don't have time to bother with you." And my grandmother lived with us, and she said, "Now that isn't the way to teach her. Hester, you get the stuff and we'll make a pie." So my first pie was a blackberry pie.
Was it good?
It looked real pretty. I was proud of it, but my brothers laughed about it, and then I cried.
Oh. Did you ever help with the harvesting?
No. Women didn't do that then like they do now.
Do you remember watching them harvest?
Oh, sure.
How did they do it?
Well, there was a harvest ring at that time. The neighbors all get together, and there was one fella, I forget what his name was now. He had a threshing machine, and about 2 or 3 of the machine men would come, and they'd stay all night and get ready for the next day. And then the next day, the women would come in, and we'd cook up a mess of stuff and feed the threshing ring. It'd take maybe a couple or 3 days.
And then they'd move on to another farm?
Yeah, moved on.
Do you know how long your parents attended school?
No, I have no idea.
When did your first ancestors settle in the United States?
I have no idea.
Did your mother ever work outside the home?
Yes. Later years, after my father was gone, she was nursemaid for Max Hott's little girl, Jean. And she was there from the time she was 14 months until she got married. And she was like a mother to Jean. Jean lives in Lincoln now.
Uh-huh. How many were in your family?
There was 4. There was 2 boys and 2 girls in my family.
Mm-hmm. You said your grandmother lived with you. Did anybody else besides your grandmother ever live with your family when you were growing up?
When I was just a little girl, my father's dad lived with us until he died. Then the grandparents stayed with their children, but I don't want that. I wouldn't be at home at Lyndon's and wouldn't be their home anymore. So I'm better off right here.
Do you remember your grandfather very well that lived with you?
Well, yes, because he was bedfast, but he had a cane with a hook on it. And if we kids would get very near the bed, he'd hook that around our neck. So we steered clear of his bed.
Oh. Where were you born?
Me, Keokuk, Iowa.
In
Okay.
what year were you born in?
1890,
And so your birthday is what?
July the 30th.
And how long did you live there before you moved to Illinois?
Oh, I don't know. I was just a little thing, but my brother and I had malaria fever real bad. We lived in the bottomlands, and when the river would overflow, the mosquitoes were so bad. So my brother and I had malaria awfully bad. And that was one reason why we moved to Illinois. And my grandparents lived at Cisco. And we stayed there for a little while till we got a place to go to. But I was just a little girl when that happened.
Were your grandparents, were they your father's parents or your mother's?
No, my mother's, Austin's.
Mhm.
Enoch Austin. Their little house is still sitting down Cisco, but it doesn't look like it did then because he kept the yard so pretty, and now it's a used car lot. So it makes you feel kind of sad when you pass it.
How many people lived in Cisco then when you moved there?
Well, it was an awful little place, but the same schoolhouse is right across the road from where my grandparents lived, and we lived in the country a little ways, and we'd walk into school, and a lot of times I would eat lunch with my grandparents.
Did you go through grade school in Cisco then?
Hmm?
Did you go through all your grade school in Cisco?
No. Later on, I went to Wildcat School.
What's Wildcat School?
Well, it was a little rural school across from where Steve Varner's used to live.
Out in the country near
Yeah.
Cisco?
Yeah.
How was it, a one classroom school?
Yes. No, there were several classes taught there. I think maybe from the first grade up to the 6th or 7th. And I went to school there. Well, 4 of us went. The 4 children went. And at that time, we only had to go just across just a patch of ground to the school. And My sister was just a little thing, maybe in the first, second grade when we went to school there. And of course, I was 6 years older than my sister.
What was the school day like? What did you do in school?
Reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, of course, I taught all classes. And when we'd go to school, the old building was cold. The teacher would have to do the janitor work, build a fire in an old stove. Sometimes the larger boys would help her build fire. We'd stand around there freezing to death till the room got warm. And we'd take a little old lunch of maybe a sandwich and apple, which is a lot different from now, because I cooked at the high school here.
Mm-hmm.
The children come to school to a nice warm meal. And
okay. It's on now.
but I enjoyed cooking at the high school. I started the hot lunch program at the high school here, and I worked for 3 years, and then I got sick, and I had to have a gallbladder surgery, and that stopped the work there, and my blood pressure was high. The doctor told me not to work anymore. But after I got out of the surgery, then my son started a lunchroom in front of his place of business, and I cooked there until I fell and broke my hip. And of course, that stopped. But I love to cook, and I've done an awful lot of it.
It sounds like it. Where did you go to school after you went to the Wildcat School?
I didn't.
What was the last grade you completed?
8.
8th grade.
Yes. Well, you see, you went to the 8th grade at the school, and then you took what would be a state exam, came to town, two other girls, and I came to town, and we took this final. But then we would have been allowed to teach, country school.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't pass it. But my mother was sick, and I had to lay out a year at school.
Mm-hmm.
So that's as far as I went.
So at that time, when you were finished with school, your family was still living out on a farm?
Yes, yes.
Then when did they move to town?
Honey, I couldn't tell you what year.
About how old were you then?
Well, I must have been about 16 or 17.
What did you do after you got done with school? What did you do after you were finished with school?
Well, we moved to town then, and I worked at the Pepsin for 3 years. And then Harry and I were married. And then I worked a while at the telephone office until I was going to have my first baby, and then I quit.
What did you do at the Pepsin? What did you do at Pepsin factory?
Oh, honey, we filled bottles. It's kind of a assembly line, and it wasn't hard work. I liked to because I was working with a bunch of other girls. At first, I worked in the office with John Hott. I filed cards. His office girl, or secretary, was Agatha Haggerty, who was out here for a while, but she's gone. And they had a home on State Street. It's still there. Susie McIntosh lives there now.
Uh-huh.
So I worked in the front part until business got a little slow. Then I went to work in the back part, and I worked under Pop Priestley, they called him then. And Oh, I don't know, honey.
When did you meet your husband?
When?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, honey.
How did?
These years.
Well, how did you happen to meet him?
He always said I proposed to him.
Oh, did he? Where did you first see him?
Well, there used to be a skating rink up over the National Bank. That is National Bank now. It wasn't then.
Mm-hmm.
There was a skating rink, and I was working at the Pepsin, and it was leap year. And the girls were going to have a leap year party, skating party.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I wanted to get someone that knew how to skate. So I was skating with Harry that evening, and I said, would you like to go to the party with me? And he said yes. So we went together after that, always until we were married.
What kind of things did you do when you went out together?
Oh, walk in the city park and around the square. Not like they do now, get in a car and go miles. But we enjoyed it anyway.
And then you proposed to him.
Yeah, that's what he said.
When were you married?
Honey, now that I can't tell you.
Well, can you tell? What was your wedding like?
What?
What was your wedding like?
Now you laugh at this too. I guess I'm the unusual person. Well, we were married at the Christian parsonage. We walked there, and our witnesses was his wife and daughter. We walked home, which his mother lived with us for 3 years.
Lived with your family? Or
With me
you?
and Harry.
Uh-huh.
And went home. The next day he went to work. I helped do the washing. And that was our
That was it, huh?
That was the honeymoon. Oh, I bet Dottie can tell you a lot more thrilling things than I.
Was your husband involved in World War I?
What?
Was your husband involved in World War I?
No, honey. His mother lived with us. And we had our first baby.
Uh-huh.
But Harry would have been in the next draft. But I don't believe he would have had to go because he had the 2 dependents. But it was rough times. Harry then didn't have any work, but he was a butcher all his life. And he did a lot of custom butchering for farmers. We had plenty of meat. They paid us in meat, not money. Nobody had any money. And it was rough times, so there's a lot of this commodity stuff, issued to us, like flour and stuff. And when I was still in bed with my baby, Harry got a job. He came home and he was so tickled. He'd found a job in a butcher shop.
Was the butcher shop in Monticello?
Yes.
Where was it?
Well, let's see. I think it was on the east side of the square, but I don't remember just who had the shop then. But Harry had always butchered, and later years, we had a butcher shop. We first started a butcher shop at A.C. Miller's ice plant, which later was a locker plant.
Where is that? Where was that
Now
located?
that is sort of southeast of Monticello. That is the edge of Monticello. And it's built up around there now, But they had such good cooling system and all there that Mr. Miller suggested to Harry start a shop there. So there was our first butcher shop. And Harry butchered his own stuff. It was good fresh meat. And a lot of people wanted him to move to town. They said it was unhandy to get out there, which was maybe a bad mistake, although we did pretty good after we moved into town, until the grocers then put in a line of meats, and all that. And then Depression came. And at that time, just before then, my sister and I had a delicatessen in the butcher shop. We did our baking and all in the back and made vegetable soup and chili. And we did real well. Of course, we had no overhead,
Now, this was when the butcher shop was in town?
In town, on the east side of the square.
What was it called?
Combs Market.
During World War I, were you affected by the rationing a lot?
Well, just like other people, yes. It was a hard time. But as I said, we always had lots of good meat, because Harry butchered out in the country for farmers, and they would always load him down with meat, and rather than money, which we needed too. And we got in debt for our groceries and all. My mother helped us with our rent until it was over with, so it was a rough time.
Where was your husband born?
Now that, I think here, Illinois.
Where was your first home where you and your husband lived? That you went back to after your wedding?
It was just a little rented home. Well, I can't tell you exactly. It's north part of town. The house, of course, has been replaced with a new one now. I couldn't tell you even what street it was on.
How many children did you and your husband have?
2 boys.
What were their names?
Harry Jr. and Lyndon, who's still living. He works at the bank. And Harry, my older boy, was a coach over the university.
After you had the meat, if you had the meat market and the delicatessen, did you work at the telephone company before or after that?
Oh, honey, I worked at the telephone company when I was first married.
What did you do there? What did you do at the telephone company?
Well, it isn't like it is now, I can tell you that.
Was the building in the same place?
Oh, no. I'll tell you where the telephone office used to be, up over where the Monticello Florist shop is now. And at that time, there was all those little stops that had come down, I'll never forget the first fire in town when I was working there. All those things came down at once, and I was so scared. And the head operator said, "Now, don't be alarmed, just go up and down and answer." Then you had to tell people where the fire was. Now they don't do that.
So you were an operator?
Yeah.
Was that interesting?
No. I didn't care for it. I was pregnant, and I had a lot of ear trouble caused from the phones, earphones. No, I didn't like it.
So after your children were born, then you went to work at the delicatessen?
Oh, yes. My boys were both in school. They went to South School. When they were little, we lived in north end of town, and they went to the Lincoln School until Harry was going to have to go to South School. And that was such a distance. We bought a place on Marion Street. And so then, honey,
What church did you go to in Monticello?
Presbyterian always.
Was that church the same then?
Well, it's been remodeled, but it's same location. A sweet little church.
How many families attended that church then?
I don't know. Of course, all the older people, it's so many of them gone, no. There's the Cookers that went to church there, and Reba Edie, who was here, Dottie. Well, when they have a meeting here or have a communion, they've usually had it in our room here, and it's got so our room's full.
What other organizations did you belong to in Monticello?
Oh, years ago. Well, I've always belonged to Royal Neighbors, but it's nearly a thing of the past. But I have carried my insurance with the Royal Neighbors only. I never cared much for lodges.
How long did your husband have the butcher shop?
How long? Oh, I imagine maybe 10 years. Of course, the years go by, and I have no idea.
What did he do after the butcher shop?
Why, my husband went to work at the locker plant well, A.C. Miller was over the whole thing, but Leo Heffington and Andy Anderson, who was with the State Bank here, owned the locker plant. And my husband went to work, after he sold the butcher shop, he went to work out there. And then it burned, and he went down to be met and set up the locker plant down there. And then he went to work for Elmer Honke, and he's where the Gamble store is now. And Harry worked there until he passed away at one of Harry Jr.'s games. He went into an overtime, and the last words he said was, "We'll have to sit through 5 more minutes of it," and he's gone.
Was it a basketball or football?
Basketball.
Here at Monticello?
Oh, no, at Illinois.
When he was a coach?
He's playing Northwestern.
Was he a coach or was he playing?
He was a coach. Harry Jr. was a coach, and it went into an overtime. They played Northwestern, and my husband said, "We'll have to sit through 5 more minutes," and he was gone. That was it. So that's about the end of my story, honey.
Now, you talked about you worked at the school. When did you do that?
Honey, these dates.
Well, I mean, was it after your husband had passed away?
Oh, no, he was living. My husband was living even when I worked for Lyndon in his place.
What did you do at the school? What did you do at the school?
At school? Honey, I worked.
You said you set up a program, though. What did you do?
Well, the home ec teacher was at the head of all of it, but they were lovely, and we'd get together and make out the menus and decide what she'd have to order, and I enjoyed it a lot, but it was hard work because I had nothing to work with. All the table I had then was wooden horses with boards on, and a home ec teacher in our class from university came over, and to see the cafeteria. And she said, I don't see a thing the matter with it, only you should have a new table. So I told the janitor about it, and next morning there was the nicest table. But at that, it isn't like they have now. I went to Lincoln School, the last day of school. Two of the girls that was cooking there was in high school when I cooked there. And I enjoyed it. I said, now you've eaten my food and I've eaten yours.
What school? Were you at the high school when you cooked? Was it at the high school?
Yeah, oh yes, the cafeteria, the old cafeteria.
About how many kids were in school
150.
then? 150.
And the first, maybe the first 6 or 8 months, I did it by myself. I had no help. And then the school board said I needed help.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now tell us then you got help?
Yes, Mrs. Summers, the janitor's wife, helped me then. And then I got sick, and I had to leave.
What kind of things did you fix?
Oh, of course on Fridays with several Catholic children, we tried to have a meat substitute, like macaroni and cheese and maybe scalloped potatoes. Gratin potatoes, plenty of cheese in it. We always had a good and balanced meal. And, sometimes we had cookies, sometimes we'd have cornbread and ham and beans. And I made a lot of hot rolls, too. And I've had a lot of compliments from my kids.
Sounds good.
And one time, while I worked there, they chose me as Mother of the Year, and my picture was in the paper.
Oh, that's nice.
Which was nice. I liked that.
And then you got ill. You became ill and you had to quit.
Yeah.
And then how long after that did you go to work in the lunchroom?
Well, I had gallbladder surgery, and it must have been 6 or 8 months before I was able to do anything.
And where was the lunchroom located?
It used to be called the Combs Recreation Parlor, and it was on East Washington. It was next door to the Illinois Power Office. It's Bill Glasgow's office now.
Mm-hmm. And what was in that? What did you have in there? Did you have pool tables?
Yes, and one billiard table. There was 5 pool tables and a billiard table. And Lyndon did real well there with the lunch room combined, but it burned. But I had fallen and broke my hip, and I had to quit. And they missed my pies and my donuts, so I've been told.
How has the square changed since you came here? How has the square changed since you came here?
Oh my, so many new fronts on the buildings, And Leapers, of course, furniture stores moved down where the hatchery used to be. And Lloyd Baker has fixed a little building that used to be a cleaning place. And Lyndon said he thought it was going to be men's clothing in there. Mm-hmm. It's fixed so pretty. And
when your husband had the meat market on the square, and you had the little deli in there, what other stores were on the square?
Well, Fred Dressback had a bakery at one time, and it was where the Montgomery Ward store is now, and below in the basement was Guy Burns's beauty shop, barber shop. let's see, where else? I can't remember. Of course, Leapers have been, in business for years until, of course, now Jim's out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But his uncle, J.D. Leaper, used to have a matinee store on the west side of the square.
Well, what's a matinee store?
Was sort of like a dime store. I know at one time when he sold out the stuff there and was going to move over on the south side, a friend of mine said, "Hester, you ought to go down. He's selling such pretty dishes and things." And that time they had the pie dishes, and I bought 6 little pie dishes for 15 cents apiece. And now I couldn't tell you what they'd be worth because they were old and they were real pretty.
Mm-hmm. How many grocery stores were on the square then?
Well, there was Hazard's. That was on the west side of the square. I don't know exactly.
Did you ever ride the Interurban?
No, sir, I never have.
You never,
Never.
you never got a chance. What were you doing? Where were you in your life during the Depression? Where was your husband working?
He wasn't, honey. That's what was the matter.
He didn't have a job then.
No, he didn't have a job. Only this custom butchering I told you about.
Yeah, that was during the Depression then.
Yes.
Do you recall when the banks closed?
Well, my 2 boys had a little account in the banks, and at that time, $200 or $300 was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And young Harry had $375 in the National Bank, and Lyndon had $150. And Harry was going to university then. That is, he was starting and needed his money, of course. But, it paid out every cent. He got all of his money out of it. They both did.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, I think Mr. Dighton had to go to the pen about something that went wrong in the bank. It closed. But it wasn't hardly fair because it paid out everything. And he's gone, of course, long ago.
Do you recall having ration stamps during
Yeah. Oh, yes. Meat and butter and stuff like that. And then during World War II, gas was rationed, And Lyndon was to get was to graduate from air school at Midland, Texas. And we wanted to go when he got his wings. So I went to the ration board and I asked them if we could have some extra stamps to go. So we drove out there, and he graduated from air school. Then he, of course, had to go across. And he was in the service 5 years, Lyndon was. And he came out as a captain. And his plane was shot down. The pilot was killed, and the co-pilot brought the plane down. So I'm lucky to have my Lyndon.
Where was it shot down?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. Over England someplace. Because he told about going to London several times, And yes, there was side times too.
How did you feel when you saw the first automobile?
My first one was Allerton had a big limousine. You know Bobby Allerton. And there was an orchard down in front of our house on the Smith place. And when we kids would hear that car coming, we'd run. And of course, once we got down to the road, it was gone. But it'd just go chugging along, you know. It was supposed to be something. And that was the first car I'd seen.
What was your first car?
Hmm.
Do you recall what your first car was?
Let's see. I forget the name of it. It was, they don't make them anymore. My sister's husband and Harry bought one at the same time. Whippet. It was called a Whippet. That was our first car.
Did you drive into Champaign or Decatur very often?
Oh, yes, quite a little bit. Decatur mostly at that time.
To shop, or what were you doing?
Well, one time my mother was in the hospital over there. She had gallbladder surgery, and I went, of course, real often to see her. And I had a brother that lived there, too. I'd go over there once in a while.
What were the roads like?
Well, they were dusty. Fogs of dust.
Did it take you very long to get there?
Well, longer than it does now, although then they could drive faster than they're allowed to now. I know when we went out to California, we'd drive 60 and 65 miles an hour, but of course you can't now. I'm not supposed to, anyway.
Did you drive an automobile?
Oh, yes, since the kids were little.
What president do you recall most vividly?
Huh?
What president do you recall most vividly?
I don't know. Maybe Harry Truman.
Why?
Because of the bomb. The atomic bomb. I think maybe that was it.
Where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, I don't know. I imagine just at home. I know it was a terrible message.
Did you have a radio?
I don't believe we did. I'm not sure. But I remember the first phonograph we had.
What was it like?
Well, it had a big wooden horn, looked like a sunflower. And it played cylinder records, you know. My dad bought it and brought it home one day, and we were so thrilled about that phonograph. At that time, it was something.
So this was when you were still living with your parents, that you had the...
Yes, when we lived in the country.
Do you remember your first radio?
Yes, I think so. It was a big cabinet-like thing, big as that, you know.
What kind of programs did you listen to?
Oh, a lot of the soap operas. I couldn't tell you, honey, exactly.
Do you remember Prohibition?
Not too much.
You never had any temperance meetings or anything?
No.
You weren't involved in that?
No.
Well, I appreciate you letting us talk with you. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Well,